for taking a little time this evening to join us. My name is Alberta Brinson Moore. I'm a community and education advocate. I'm a 57-year resident of Los Angeles. I live in the Leimert Park neighborhood in the Crenshaw district. My family moved here in 1965 from Georgia and initially located in the Watts community, later moved to the Vermont Square area. So we've been around for a minute. My husband's family is third generation.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second and ask everybody to please put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. If you could please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
So at this time, I would like to introduce our co-host. Tonight we have Pastor Peter Watts from the Watts of Power Foundation, Tanisha Hall, founder of the Whitehall Arts Academy, Jennifer Johnson, founder of Hummingbirds Foundation, and Dr. Tunette Powell, a powerful parent education leader of diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, who will be leading our presentation tonight. We're going to have about a 30-minute presentation, then we'll open it up for questions and feedback. But first, I want to set a few ground rules. We're here to have an open and honest discussion. We welcome all viewpoints. We understand that people have very strong feelings about issues of housing, mobility, and transportation, as well as change happening in our community. We welcome your thoughts and discussion. We just want to ask for a little civility. Our main ground rule is to treat each other with respect, no name calling. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll answer as many as possible during the presentation. We have an expert in city planning, Ed Mendoza, on this Zoom, as well as some of the team behind the Livable Communities Initiative. And we may call on them to answer some questions. Jenny will help moderate questions about the presentation. We will tape the presentation, but not the questioning and answering session, so people can feel free to speak openly. And now I will turn this over to Renee from the Livable Community Initiatives to give some brief background on our current housing crisis.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, this happens every single time. My screen goes away for just a second. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. I am a Los Angeles resident. I am a renter, and I'm also a member of HODG, Hang Out, Do Good, which is a group of over 2,000 progressive activists who have been studying LA's housing and homelessness crisis. I am not in any way, shape, or form an expert. I'm just someone who cares. And our group has spent the last year or so researching and talking to housing advocates, architects, affordable housing developers, professors at higher education schools, city planners, transportation experts, and most importantly, LA residents, renters and homeowners, to understand the problem and how to work with communities to develop potential solutions. So we're a consensus-driven group that is constantly expanding. Just hop on our website, join the email list. We're here not to dictate solutions, but to discuss and constantly evolve our ideas based on the feedback from things like this, as well as other events. A lot of our Zoom conversations so far have focused on the West Side because the most affluent LA communities have not built their fair share of affordable housing in the past. So LA residents who are housing secure sometimes fight housing, and that's the reason why we have such a shortage of affordable homes in LA now. But by listening to concerns and adapting our plans, we've had some success creating support for building more housing in a way that we believe can benefit everyone in our community. And we're excited to have this discussion with you folks down here in South Los Angeles. There are a lot of exciting things happening in South LA, and we hope that this can be just another one in addition to all of the other things that are happening down here, if it's something that interests you all. So how did we get here? Let's kind of get to the bare bones of all of this. This right here is a current zoning map of Los Angeles. So for LA, all the yellow that you see, approximately 3/4 of LA, predominantly on the west side, is zoned exclusively for single family homes. While all the orange on the lower right, that's South and East LA.
But talk to your counselor. She's like, that's kind of weird. I said, oh, okay, whatever. But
if everyone can just take a second to make sure that they're on mute, just so that we can all listen, and then we'll have a time to participate, everyone together. Thank you. So back to the map here. The orange, which is on the lower right, that's South and East Los Angeles. That's where all the housing density, multifamily apartments, and affordable housings are concentrated. So this didn't happen by accident. And many of you are probably pretty familiar with the term redlining. So zoning and racist covenants were a powerful tool of segregation in Los Angeles. And while redlining and exclusionary covenants have been illegal since the late 1950s, the map of Los Angeles that concentrates poverty, segregation, and housing density into contained neighborhoods has not changed considerably. Two more maps complete the picture. So on the left is where all the affordable housing has been concentrated. And on the right is a median income map for Los Angeles. They tell essentially the same story. On the left, all of the affordable housing and the housing density is segregated down in the south and east of Los Angeles, while, no surprise to anyone, all the wealth is exactly where it was designed to be, in affluent single-family enclaves. So given our current housing situation, this means that people are looking further and further from job centers to find affordable housing, moving into what was once more affordable neighborhoods, including many areas of South Los Angeles. They bid up rents, they bid up sale prices, and they push out longtime residents. While this has obviously benefited homeowners in some historically Black neighborhoods in South LA, and it has created some wealth, it has been tough on renters and has also caused gentrification and displacement, with second or third generation residents getting pushed even further out. There's another terrible outcome to all of this. So by not building near where the jobs are located, workers have to drive from miles and miles away, hours every day, adding to traffic congestion and air pollution, not to mention all of our collective stress levels, because I don't think the 10 is anyone's happy place. So another reason why this is all a problem is that it's making everything cost so much. So why does housing cost so much? So simply put, housing production has not kept up with population growth in LA County. And the scarcity is what is driving up the prices. So right now, LA has the fewest number of homes per adult of any major city in America. Los Angeles needs to build at least 456,000 homes over the next 8 years. And the state has ordered the city to immediately zone for an additional 250,000 new homes by October. So the clock is really ticking at this. If we don't, as a city, decide where to put more housing, others are going to decide for us. There's 4 categories of need. The state of California breaks our affordable housing units into these 4 categories. And we need housing at every level of affordability, from extremely low income households to moderate income households. We have the public dollars to subsidize some affordable housing for low income earners, and that's in the blue, but we don't subsidize moderate income affordable housing, and that's the orange part right there. That is actually our biggest deficit. There is affordable housing. This is affordable housing for teachers, for nurses, for frontline workers. Our next slide is about the subsidies. So we have limited public funds for subsidies. In our best year, we have built close to 3,000 units in Los Angeles through affordable housing subsidies and programs like inclusionary zoning, which is an affordable housing set aside with a more expensive market rate development. But we need almost 500,000 units. So another thing that's come off of this is that rents have skyrocketed. So because there isn't enough housing supply, especially of the smaller and more affordable units, rents have skyrocketed. And you can see in the slide here, as we stopped building, rents went through the roof. So we're now at a point where the lowest 10th percentile of residents by income spend 67% of their income on rent. That is called a rent burden. So housing theoretically should cost no more than 1/3 of your income. And what happens when we have such high rents and such a high population of rent burden is that high rents track with homelessness, and the data backs all of this up. And people of color are disproportionately impacted. So we have tried for decades to fix these problems, but it only seems to get worse. We all want more affordable housing, and we know this because we voted to pay for it. So in 2016, Measure HHH was overwhelmingly passed. This raised $1.2 billion in financing to build affordable housing. But because our system has become so complex, $1.2 billion doesn't buy you nearly enough affordable housing. And this slide kind of shows us why. So according to the mayor's official tracking of HHH housing, just one unit of subsidized affordable housing costs on average a little over $583,000 to build. And after 5 years, we only have 1,024 units in service. Not great. So what happened? This is showing us the key drivers of cost. Surprisingly, it's not just materials, bricks, lumber, things like that. A lot of the exorbitant costs of affordable housing are due to bureaucracy and zoning laws that we've created. So some of the key cost factors: parking requirements. So Los Angeles has this thing called parking minimums, and that requires builders to build an enormous amount of parking, more than one spot per bedroom. This is very expensive, an average of $50,000 to $80,000 per spot, which means that precious funds that could go towards housing more people are spent on housing cars. And with developments that are not government subsidized, these costs are passed on to renters. So that means that many Angelenos who don't even own cars are forced to pay for parking that they don't use, just so they can live in the city. And this impacts low Angelenos the most. Another cost is soft costs. That's all in the pink. So people who oppose new housing in their neighborhoods sue people who build. So anyone who wants to build multifamily housing needs an army of lawyers, expediters, and consultants to get through the legal battles. And that adds about 20% to the overall cost. And then there's carrying costs. So because it takes anywhere between 5 to 7 years to complete a project, it adds another 20% in interest and taxes on the land that is just sitting there. So over here in the yellow section, we have the funding stack. So most subsidized affordable housing, requires anywhere from 4 to 8 separate funding sources, and that's called the funding stack. And the different competing requirements get incredibly complicated. So imagine having 8 mortgages on your house. It's kind of similar to that. And then we also have the fees and the red tape. The city will add various fees and requirements. And because LA's permitting agencies are completely overwhelmed and not communicating with each other, it can get months to get an on-site inspection, and there's no coordination between those agencies. So that altogether is how we get to $538,000 a unit. So that $1.2 billion, and after 5 years, we have again just a little over 12,000 units built, or 1,200 units built. Eventually, we will have to get close to 8,000 HHH units, but Los Angeles needs about 185 affordable housing units to meet the need. So our system is incredibly broken, but the good news is we broke it, so we can fix it. We need to build. We need to build equitably, and we need to build where the jobs are in order to protect our climate. In the city of Los Angeles, they've created a roadmap called the Equitable Distribution of Affordable Housing Plan, mandating that every neighborhood builds their fair share of housing. The biggest deficit, as you can see, is on the west side. But many South LA residents want to live affordably right here in South LA. They want opportunities to buy home and create intergenerational wealth in the community where they grew up. So we want to share one idea that we think can have a huge impact. If South LA residents want this, it's a vision to create a more vibrant, revitalized, affordable, walkable communities with character and locally Black-owned businesses that we see in Lemur Park and the new destination to Crenshaw. It's a chance to create attainable home ownership opportunities for members of the community who are currently priced out. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jeanette Powell, who is, as you know, a South LA resident, who explained the ideas for favorable, more sustainable Los Angeles.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with everyone this evening. Wish we were doing this in person, but thankful that we have the technology. As was stated, I am Tanette Powell. I'm a mother, I'm an educator, and honestly, just someone that's committed to the work of liberation, not just for myself, but for the collective. And what better areas to think about the work than in the areas of education and housing? I want to preface this conversation just being very honest that we know that these are very racial and racializing conversations and also very class conversations. So none of those things are lost upon me of how we got to this place. And so tonight is really about where do we go, right? And so housing is one of the areas that continues to affect us. I can see this in multiple ways. As an educator, I can also see how this directly impacts our schools. As families are priced out of the neighborhoods, enrollment in our schools continue to decline. And as teachers, especially Black teachers, move further away because they cannot afford to live here, it becomes harder and harder to staff our local schools. So the number one issue for voters in LA, that will be no surprise, is the crisis of our unhoused brothers and sisters. All the experts are saying the same thing though, which is that there are solutions and they can work. That was your part to shout, right? That was the shout, is that there are solutions and they can work. I think some of the challenging things is that some of the programs that we have to house our unhoused brothers and sisters aren't working as well as they could. And that's because we need to address the massive housing shortage. I'll never forget when I first started really volunteering and getting more into thinking about our brothers and sisters who are not currently housed. And someone said, if I gave everybody a voucher right now and said, go find a place, right? They would have nowhere to go. Well, vacancy rates in Southern California are at a 22-year low. And this drives up rental and sales prices as people compete for a limited number of homes. And this causes long-time South Central residents to be pushed out, right? Many of my friends have been pushed out of the same neighborhoods that they grew up in. And so this housing shortage is making it so that other programs can't fix the problem, right? We can't fix it with some of the great programs that we have because we just don't have enough housing. We are spending billions trying to house people, but people are simultaneously falling into homelessness faster than we're housing them. It's musical chairs. We need to build housing to stop people falling into homelessness. And as a result, our programs can actually work. We know how to help people, right? We have funding. Now there's never enough, but we do have funding. And there is some incredible work that's happening all over the city, but they can't work until we build our way out of the housing shortage. So the $1 million question, why can't we build enough housing, right? At the root of the problem, our zoning laws and our system make it very, very difficult and expensive to build small, affordable apartments in Los Angeles. You will literally lose money building small studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in LA that are affordable for the average worker, for our seniors, for our young couples and small family. I have 3 kids. I'm not the small family we're talking about, but for those smaller families. So very little of these buildings and small studios get built. Instead, as someone did mention earlier in the chat, we see big developers building huge, expensive 3-bedroom luxury apartments. And we have a small number of subsidized, affordable units that only meet a tiny fraction of the need. So, why is it expensive to build apartments in LA? Well, because of the zoning. When the stakeholders involved can't agree where to put housing, right, which is always one of the big things, when the neighbors fight housing, and I'm not here to, that's a conversation that we got to be having together in community as a homeowner, right? Like I've been in those positions. But when we have those two things happening, it starts a domino effect. And we end up losing a lot of costs. We end up adding, a lot of costs that we don't need. So the vast majority of projects just don't make financial sense. So they don't get built. So we tried to understand here at LCI, we tried to understand the core of the problem. Why do people fight housing? And it turns out that it's not as many things as you think, right? So number one, how things look. As you can see in this slide, ugly buildings. I know that that's one thing that I think about as a homeowner. I don't want that in front of, right? Like you don't want that in your area. We want it, we want it to look good. And so this is a sort of famous building with 3 levels of podium parking, and it basically destroys the livability of the street. The second one is height, right? So a lot of homeowners, you just don't want tall buildings next to them. It looks, I mean, again, it kind of goes to the design, but if you have this huge building, it's blocking your view now, right? And so it's a privacy issue, and it's property values, because for a lot of people, you know, your retirement is in your home, right? And so I know that that's what I'm obviously banking on. And if we're compassionate, we acknowledge we don't have a strong social safety net in this country, right? That's just the facts. But it's complicated because studies show if you allow apartments on a single family home block, the land value actually goes up, right? And so the land value goes up. But like me, many homeowners are kind of like, I live here. And that's something we do have to work on, right? We may say to ourselves, I don't want to cash out. I've been here 25 years. I like my neighbors and I don't want to move and start again. There are a number of things, but we have found a ton of support for the following, right? Building gently. Just 3 to 5 stories of housing, as you see here, above local businesses, along commercial corridors, right? Some people, right, complain about the tall skyscrapers going up near metro stops, but we don't actually need 10 stories everywhere because we have hundreds of miles of single-story commercial corridors. In 1986, which was the year I was born, LA voters passed a law called Prop U that made it almost impossible to build more than 1.5 stories up along most of our commercial streets. This is why we have miles and miles of auto body shops along streets like Pico Boulevard, right? But this could be our housing. We can change zoning on our corridors and build just 3 to 5 stories of beautiful housing. But that runs into the biggest reasons neighbors fight housing: parking and traffic congestion. And tell me, this is the part where I get excited about as a homeowner, right? You say to yourself, no one wants 400 units and all of those cars down the block from them, right? Number one question I'm always asking is, well, will everybody park? And so we have created a compromise, and parking minimums is what that compromise is. We actually make builders build way too much parking in the city. We have more than 1 space per bedroom. And as we know, it's incredibly expensive. I think we saw those numbers earlier, right? We force people who don't even own cars to pay for parking they never use just to rent an apartment in LA. Currently, most Angelenos do not even have the right to live in an apartment in LA without paying for parking. Let's just think about that for a second. But even parking aside, we still have to deal with congestion, right? And 400 units with cars is going to be in traffic. So the neighbors, right, myself included, still kind of pushing. However, if we kind of look at this a little bit, and I want us to focus on that pink, the soft cost and the carrying cost. All of these expenses have driven the small mom and pop builders, our local Black and brown builders, out of the market. And we've ended up with 2 monopolies. We have about 5 developers who build ultra luxury. Think Rick Caruso. You've been wondering how he can pay for all those TV ads that we keep seeing. That's how. And about 5 developers who can navigate in the craziness of trying to build subsidized affordable housing, which involves 18 to 14 funding streams, 7 years of delays. It's hard to overstate how complex it is, right? But this drives the small operators out of the business of building in LA. And these are the builders that we want and the builders that we need. The mom and pop builders, our Black and brown builders, right? They only build ADUs or single family homes or apartments in states like Texas. We need our family owned builders creating the housing we want in LA, not the housing we don't want. We need to create the conditions where our small, locally owned businesses can flourish. So there's an even bigger issue in all of this. This image you see here, it's an ultra luxury Rick Caruso building at La Cienega in San Vicente. How much do you think this unit rents for? I want somebody to put in the chat. How much does it rent for? I saw somebody said 3,500, 3,000, 5,000. All right, and we're gonna stay there. This unit rents for $11,000 a month. We weren't even close, right? Like it blew my mind. Yes, Rebecca, yes. But it's along this commercial corridor that doesn't feel anything like a welcoming neighborhood to walk around. You can't cross this street safely because it's like 9 lanes of cars going 50 miles an hour, which forces people to feel like they need to own cars just to be safe on our own streets. But what if we address parking and congestion and housing altogether? That is the core of the idea of the Livable Communities Initiative. This is the idea we're here to present to you tonight. Upzone our commercial corridors while at the same time making them what we call a complete street, right? Walkable and vibrant communities with housing above small businesses, on a grocery store and a barbershop and everything you need right there, right? Think about outdoor dining, wide sidewalks, slow cars, parklets, a sticky street, and I'm talking about tree canopies, cafes, and local businesses to cover your daily errands. So we want people to create, right, community and hubs where we can live, work, play, connect. And if it's near a metro stop and the sidewalks are safe and pleasant and it's safe to bike, and, right, if we can do those things, we're able to get what we call a 15-minute city. It's a neighborhood where you can walk or bike to everything you need on a daily and weekly basis. Now, I know, right? I told you I had 3 kids. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And so you're thinking like, I don't want to bike and walk everywhere. Like, I need my car. I have to go here and there. I just want to be very real with y'all. This is not for everyone, right? However, I want us to sit with this because right now we don't have options, right? So this is for people at different stages of their lives, right? Younger generations of kids are not rushing out to get driver's license and buy cars. This is for people who don't want to drive, right? I have a lot of friends who don't want to drive, where you're kind of forced into driving, right? This is for our seniors too, who have reached the stage where it no longer feels safe to drive. It's for people who don't want to spend money on a car and would rather spend their money locally. And being very honest, for myself, even though I might need to have a car, if I could use my car less, that would be the gift, right? That is the goal. Between the crazy gas prices, insurance, maintenance, it takes about 7 to 10K a year to own a car. Cutting out the cost of a car can make a big difference for people who are struggling to get by on minimum wage, right? And we can even go beyond that. When we see gas is it's just coming down now under $6. Like, right, it is the struggle, right? The struggle is very real. So what we do need to understand is that we don't all have to live this way, right? We're not saying, okay, right now, let's get rid of all the cars that are in the city of LA. Let's do this. We need to make it an option for those who want to, right? An option that, yes, you may say, I want to keep my car. Okay, let's think about it. Let's talk about it. But, and I may say that, but from some of my friends who are like, I'm waiting for the day when I don't have to have one, or they're already doing renting, where they're sharing cars and things, they need this option, right? You may have someone in your family where you say, not me, but I know cousin such and such. We need that option. And so right now, 60% of LA households have 1 to 2 people. And 25% of people, even in wealthy communities like Santa Monica, live without a car. I'm gonna say that again, 1/4 of the people in this city live without a car. So we need to make it easier for people to live in LA, either car free, and maybe that's not you, or at least car light. And that's where I'm at. I'm in the car light right now, right? And you can still live here and own a car and park it nearby, or use Turo, or get around car share when you need it. So question is, where would this work, right? We have some examples of where this might work. With the goal of building housing equitably across LA. Here are the ingredients that you need when we start to think about equity in building of housing. And with this project that we're really talking about here. So in order for this to be successful, here are the 3 main ingredients. Small local businesses that can be protected and enhanced, that's key. right? We all want to protect those small businesses. I'm someone who tries to keep my money in South LA. The second one is access to high quality transit like the metro. We know that, we've been waiting for a long time for that transit to happen along Crenshaw, and here it is. And then the last one is in streets where these changes won't create more traffic, right? We don't want to create more traffic. And so if we think about those three things, we work with the LA Department of Transportation to think about what streets could work best from a traffic perspective. We're going to start with the West Side just as an example. So on the West Side, which again has not done their fair share of housing, right? Which should be no surprise here when we start to think about gentrification issues. But if we think about West Boulevard here, which you can see pictured here, it's a great street to look at because it terminates both ends, right? At my alma mater, UCLA, and the Village to the north. So let's pull out this map here. And south of Pico, it turns into a residential street. And no one wants through traffic on their residential street. They hate it. I hate it, right? Sepulveda is a few blocks away, and you have the 405. And since the purple line is coming in, it can connect the two transit lines, which is great for the Department of Transportation. So this is census data. And I know I'm running through some of this kind of quickly, but again, I want to have time for us to ask questions. So I'm trying to give you as much information as I can, as efficiently as I can. But someone can say slow down in the chat and I will slow down. All right, so this is census data. 63,000 people commute into Westwood every day because there's not enough housing. 63,000 people commute into Westwood every day. I used to be that commuter because I told you all I went to UCLA. You can see it plotted here on the map, and you can see the 3-hour commutes each way. Plus, the university can't house all their students. A student activist told us that 1 in every 14 students will sleep in their car because they're unhoused or because they can't get home 2 hours away and back for class in the morning. So at night, there are lines of cars in Westwood with the lights on, kids watching Netflix on their phones and running their engines to keep warm. Yeah, like we wanted to think about what we could do to change that, to reimagine the area of Westwood. So we worked with the Koreatown artist, Ana Duarte Benitez, to do a before and after. So this is Westwood before. Now let's look at after. Stores on the ground floor, all the stores stay, right? No displacement. And check me on this, no displacement. This is very, very important to the work of LCI. Slow cars, not too many. Keep the parking, so we did not get rid of the parking. Trees, bike lanes, and build housing. And we don't actually need that many streets because the housing can be compact and dense. If we build small apartments above businesses along the blue lines on this map, we have the capacity to meet a large portion of the city's housing needs. And if we fit with the city's equitable distribution of affordable housing plans for the West Side, Central, LA, and the Valley. All right, so let's do another one. Let's look at Roberson before. All right. From a traffic perspective, streets that have that dead end, they're perfect, like Roberson and West Hollywood. All right, let's look at it after. Right. Here is Roberson Boulevard as an LCI. Let's do another one. This is Culver City before. This is Washington Boulevard in Culver City. We thought it was perfect because they already have the complete streets with bike and bus lanes near their downtown. Here's a before and after. Now, we also want to think a little bit about Pico Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, and Vermont. So again, just trying to give you quick suggestions. The Department of Transportation suggested, why not go along our amazing red line, right? Hollywood to Vermont and down to USC and capture all the students. So instead of having what's called a car sewer, just cars with no thoughtfulness or design, that's what you see here, Vermont could be this. A dedicated bus lane can work almost at the level of a light rail, right? And incredibly grateful to have Pastor Peter Watts here with us tonight, who is one of our co-hosts. He has a phenomenal idea. He has a church and foundation headquarters on Vermont. He has a vision to turn it into a teacher village to help attract more Black male teachers back to the neighborhood, because right now they're being priced out. So we took a new teacher village urban infill project without parking in Newark, New Jersey, designed by the architect who designed the Getty, and we envisioned what a similar village might look like on Vermont, right across the street from local schools. This is a much bigger project than what LCI typically would work on, but again, Pastor Watts had this vision and the community gets to decide, right? You decide, we abide. And so the Newark Teachers Village has a shuttle that takes teachers to the grocery store, to the airport, and to the schools where they work. It's this idea of if we can dream it, we can do it. We also have some CSUN students attended today who suggested Adams Boulevard and Van Nuys Boulevard, which could also be great. But the truth is, really any neighborhood that wants it can have an LCI. It's up to the community. I always believe in a FUBU, for us, by us. But increasing the walkability of a neighborhood increases nearby residential property values and the quality of life. So we think neighborhoods may wind up competing to have this sort of amazing street, in my opinion. The community can choose the architecture they want. The city can have a program for pre-approved architectural designs that the neighborhood has chosen, because we want to make sure we preserve the culture of who we are, right? And so you can see some designs here of what those architecture examples could look like. We'll just go through a few of those. And a group of LA architects have created a design contest to get architects and artists to reimagine our streets, so we can start a conversation about what we want LA to look like. I think it's a very powerful thing. I think, I know for myself, I'm a new homeowner. I've been owning a home for about 3 years, but just in general, when I've thought about, the city that I live in, I haven't thought a lot about what it might mean to have a hand in designing what that city looks like. And so I think it's very important and powerful that we have opportunities like this to say, this is what we want it to look like. For someone like Pastor Watts to say, I have a vision. Not only do I want this housing, I kind of know what I want it to look like. We need more of that, because here in South Central, there are some great options if the community is in support of it. But again, we don't want big developers. Let's take a look at Crenshaw, right? We all know the K line is opening this fall. It will be possible to live in our community and take the metro downtown to Santa Monica, to Culver City. And I live in Hyde Park. So there will be a stop a few blocks from the corner of in my neighborhood, which is right at Hyde Park and Crenshaw Boulevard. An HHH affordable housing project is already being planned for one corner. I've been watching them at work. It looks like it's almost ready. And right across the street from that, we have a local grocery and barbershop. So we've kind of reimagined what that may look like. And here's the same corner with mixed use housing, right? It's going to be right above local businesses. Now, this is my imagining, my dream up, my husband and I, right? We chose a more modern look to imagine the street. You see the art still there. We love art. Like if you come to our house, it's all art. But again, the community gets to decide. So this is just a mock-up of what we thought of what's a possibility. So we want to provide local business proprietors, especially Black-owned businesses, from displacement. And that's a very, very real thing. The goal is for the community to have an equity stake. And again, we can certainly build apartments with parking if it's needed. But I don't want us to be stuck in a box, because parking is something that takes a while for me to just like wrap my mind around a life without parking, because we have been conditioned to need cars. But who likes driving in LA? I'll wait. If you do, just put it in the chat and say, I love driving. And let's just start some type of community thing, because it doesn't have to be like this, right? Like today is dreaming outside of the box. I haven't been able to see every comment in the chat. I've seen people saying we need tiny homes, and I've seen people saying different things on, some of the things that we want, some of the things we need. And again, like this is what it's about, right? And so, I just want to put that out there because I think it's important. When we think about the new Crenshaw streetscaping plan to make the street more friendly for pedestrians and bikers, we got a bus lane, right? We got the K line opening this fall with stops in Lemert, where I'm always at, Hyde Park, where I live. It will just be much easier to live here without a car, maybe not today, but in the near future. And right. And so when we start to think about that, some of this work is about planting trees, right? It's not just about this moment, but what do we want for those who are coming after us too? And I believe in planting flowers and trees. The flowers we're going to see today, the trees we may not. We have an opportunity with this project to do both, right? We've also taken a closer look at how these units can be naturally affordable for those who are on a lower income, right? When you get rid of parking minimums, which means that you're not forced to build parking, there is a bit of a perfect storm for affordability. Projects cost a lot less to build when you eliminate the cost of parking. That's just a fact. They also rent for less because people with 2 or more cars are not going to choose to live there. But again, like, this didn't become a conversation. I don't want you to leave saying, you know, Tanette said we got to give up our cars. Like, it's not for everyone at, you know, and for it depends on what stage of life you're at. So let's be open, right? But we did something. We looked at every 2-bedroom apartment for rent in LA without parking. So we looked at every 2-bedroom apartment without parking. There are not many because our zoning rules don't allow it, but the ones that already exist are relatively affordable, even in this crazy housing market. That's important. The idea is build some housing this way so residents who grew up in South LA can afford to stay in South LA, period. Right? I have a lot of friends who are living in the Valley because they cannot afford to stay in South LA. They love South LA. It's where they grew up, right? And building like this across LA will keep local residents from being displaced from neighborhoods like South LA, right? That's a very, very real thing. We can't only build them where we are. We need West LA to do their part as well, right? Because of what they're not doing, now people who would have normally chose to live in West LA are coming and bidding us out of places to live. So we just need to keep that in mind, right? It's a vicious cycle. We have to do this. It also means that we can build housing on much smaller lots. And I love this right here. Like, this is a lot in Culver City, right? It's undevelopable right now because of the parking requirements. Parking wouldn't even physically fit in this location that you're seeing because you need more space for a car to turn around, right? You need more space than the width of this lot. But what if we change the rules, right? We worked with an architect and he designed a building for this small lot. Cool Art Deco architecture, because that's what Culver City is. And it could be 9 affordable units with 6 2-bedrooms. It would be a fourth of the cost of a similar size single family home a half a block away. A fourth of the cost. You can start to imagine a community group or a group of family and friends creating a tenants in common or going in on a community land trust. These units will also be affordable for people of low and moderate incomes. And we can reach deep affordability with 15% exclusionary zoning. Allowing people to build on small lots means more projects for local entrepreneurs and small builders. That's the businesses that I want to support. I hope it's the ones you want to support. If you take away on-site parking and let people park at a nearby lot or live car-free, it means affordable small units make financial sense to build. And I mean, it has to make financial sense. Like, we understand how it all works, right? So we needed to make it make sense. Co-living models like Treehouse, founded by Prophet Walker, they're great for different times of your life, right? This model is good for students. It's good for first time, if it's your first job, if you're an artist, if you're a senior, people who work from home, right? Again, not for everybody, but options. That's the key. And small can be beautiful and have great design. This is an award-winning project in New York City. It's absolutely beautiful, right? We have found builders who are already using units, who are already building these units far faster. So for an example, in 4 months in some states, they're putting these up, right? And I saw somebody, I see you, Lisa, tiny is beautiful, right? And again, it might not be for everyone. It will be a lot harder for a family of 5, which is what I have. But again, options. And tiny is beautiful. I completely agree. And we'd be able to do this for far less. And if we build enough small apartments, we can lower rents across the city just by making it easier for people to build. It's basic supply and demand. And I want to take a minute because I feel like this would not be a presentation that would be fulfilling if we didn't talk about the impact to the climate. Environmental justice is very real, right? All of these things. And so building like this stops adding to the suburban sprawl. That's the number one thing that we talk about. It's the reason why we need cars, right? Because of the suburban sprawl. This is a tool from UC Berkeley that a climate group shared with us. It measures the most effective local policies to reduce greenhouse gases. Number 3 and 4 are what LCI does. So that's the urban infield, which is building houses near jobs. And then VMT reduction, which is vehicle miles traveled. So it's about driving less, right? So if you think about this Berkeley data and you combine it, right, as we see here, LCI, that's what we do. We combine those things, VMT reduction and infill. And we should actually do everything, right? We should think about all of these things, but we need to do this one way or another, right? So now I want to just show this quick Destination Crenshaw video. One second.
Go ahead and speak over it, Tunette. The audio is not working.
Okay. All right. All good. No worries. All right. So I just want to show you this. I mean, even if you can't hear, like, it's absolutely, beautiful, stunning. I appreciate everything that, that Destination Crenshaw has been doing. I live right in this area, as I've said many times. So I think this is absolutely awesome. I also want to say that, the work of LCI, this is not about, well, I heard we got Destination Crenshaw and such is doing this. This is not a competition. This is about a collective, right? That we want to be having these conversations. We need as many of the folks on the ground in these conversations thinking about building housing more than ever before. And we want to start a conversation about how we do that on our terms. Where do we want it? What do we want it to look like? Who is it for? Who benefits? How do we incorporate walkable hubs where we can live and have a more affordable life in LA? We've already got some amazing community visions happening. This example is one of them. Can we design our rules for new housing to benefit us as a community? These are things I haven't always thought about, right? Like, it didn't seem like a possibility, but we're at that moment where we can reimagine. We can protect local businesses. We can bring them more consumers. We can bring more vitality to the community. We can support local builders and local property owners. We can build wealth and equity in the community. And I'm not selling you a dream, right? I'm asking us to join in on the vision. We can build housing that the community can access and housing that we actually want. And we can do it without outside corporate developers. I know, right? For me, I want to enhance our walkable neighborhoods. I want to expand them. I want to think about how we create more jobs so we don't always have to go so far for them. How we create more local businesses. Tonight is about starting the conversation. And of course, how do we stop displacement in South Central? We have to build with urgency. We have to center those most impacted, which we know starts with our homeless brothers and sisters, right? We know that they look a lot like me, right? We have to think about the historically Black neighborhoods in this city who have been underinvested in, right? Who have received a lack of attention, the communities that have not been revitalized. And anytime they have been, it wasn't for us or about us. It starts with us having that vision. The work of Livable Communities Initiative, we are talking to folks who are elected. We're talking to activists, advocates. We're talking tonight. And it's all about starting a conversation, right? And I think sometimes it's easy to go through a presentation like this and just get so focused on the data, right? So focused that it's like, okay, I got all these numbers in my head and I've lost focus. But I just want to remind us that this is not just about policy. This is about policy that directly impacts people. And I want us to stay focused on the people part, right? And so I'm very honored tonight that we have Pastor Watts with us, who not only has a vision for this city, but has a very real story. And so Pastor Watts, if you would, before we go to the Q&A, if you can just breathe some life into this, because I don't want it to just be about statistics. I think we need the souls behind the statistics. And then we'll go on to Q&A. And I want to thank y'all for sitting so long and listening to me talk. But Pastor Watts, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Jeanette Powell, and thank you all for being a part of this beginning conversation. My name is Pastor Peter Watts. I pastor the Rock Church here in Los Angeles in the West Adams neighborhood, right on 20th in Vermont. And this is important to me as an educator, pastor for the past 20, almost 25 years now. When it comes to the those that have been unhoused, part of my origin story is I found my dad on Skid Row after searching for him for about 30 years, and found him on Skid Row, and going through that process of trying to get him health care and housing and services in the city of LA. It was a beast. It was really hard, and I had lots of relationships and friends and connections in LA, but the red tape and the barriers that went around trying to help him was insurmountable. And he recently passed away, God rest his soul. But this is one of the reasons why I am pursuing this big dream and vision that I have. And then again, being an educator for the past 25 years as a teacher and school site administrator, I have 3 kids. One's a therapist and 2 are teachers. And the 2 that are teachers live with my wife and I. And they said, we cannot afford to leave, and so to live in LA. And so they were really considering leaving and going to Atlanta and going to Austin, Texas, because it was more affordable for them to live there. And so, but they grew up here. They went to View Park. They lived, that was their neighborhood. That was their school. And so they want to stay in LA and they want to work in LA. And so this is the reason why we have this vision for Teacher Village and for the working class of people who would want to live and work in LA and really work across the street from their school or in their neighborhood and things like that. So that's what brings me to this conversation and why it's so important to me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate you sharing that. You all have been so patient, and I appreciate all the commentary that was happening in the chat. We want to open it up for Q&A. Jenny is going to be moderating the Q&A for us. But again, we're kind of formal tonight, but I always say formal and familial. We can do both. So, we want to take questions. It's not, the expertise is in the room. So I'm always mindful of it's not just about us. The expertise is in the room. So we'll answer any questions that we have, anything that we don't know. We'll find it out. Maybe somebody else in the room knows it. So just thank you for being here. Jenny, take it away.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hunt. I know a lot of the co-hosts tonight through my work in the educational equity space. I'm a nonprofit communications person, a former ACLU board member, and like a lot of people have been just really concerned about the housing crisis and trying to fix it. I spent a lot of time talking to my own people on the West Side about how we need to fix this problem in our own neighborhood and bring more affordable housing to the West Side. But I'm really excited to have this conversation in South LA. And I would love for you to put questions in the chat or raise your hand, either one, and we'll get the conversation going. I see Bishop Ed Smith.